Hi there. Today we're going to talk about how to build a solid thesis sentence. Lots of things go into making an effective thesis statement, and this tutorial will help you learn a little bit more about how to look at your topic as more than just a simple subject. Sometimes students simply turn the question they've been given into a statement, but as you can see from our box full of tools, there's much more to it than that. And if you don't craft a solid thesis sentence, your whole paper could go up in smoke. It might help you to think of your thesis as a sort of treasure map. You'll give us a start by staking your claim, and then briefly map out the depth of the rest of your response. Consider how the thesis sentence works and where it belongs. Most often the thesis comes at or near the end of the introductory paragraph. This is the most effective position because it allows you to flow right into the body of your essay with a clear purpose. Your thesis should also stake a claim about the topic, something that might be up for debate or an original take on the topic. If your thesis is something everyone agrees upon already or knows already, your essay won't be very interesting or very insightful. Your thesis should give your readers a sense of direction by mapping out the important ideas you plan to explore. And a solid thesis sentence should interpret the subject and offer a deep exploration of the question rather than just restate a definition of the subject. So let's see how it works. We'll start with a simple example. A common question asks you to compare and contrast two items. In this case, we'll look at two breeds of dog. It's always most effective to find two things that have some really stark contrast, and you can't get more different than a Chihuahua and a Great Dane. Whenever I give a compare and contrast essay to my students, there's always at least one student who goes for the simplest and least effective thesis like this. Chihuahuas and Great Danes are very different, but also similar. Well, that sentence doesn't really tell us a whole lot, does it? We don't know how they're different or how they're similar. We have no sense of direction. So I think we can do a little bit better. Let's try that again. This student has decided to look for the difference in size. So he gives us a thesis sentence like this. Both Chihuahuas and Great Danes are dogs, but the Chihuahua is small and the Great Dane is big. Well, my first reaction to that is, so what? That's just a fact, and it doesn't offer any insight or even any sense of direction for the rest of the paper. It's just a fact and no more than that. You have to go a lot further than that. So consider each breed by itself first. Have you ever wondered why a Chihuahua is so small and a Great Dane is so large? To build a strong thesis sentence, you have to dig deeper and you have to ask questions. For example, what does size have to do with anything? There might be something important about it, but what is it? You might consider what purpose each breed may have served in past society. It could be important that a Great Dane was used for hunting bears and deer. And it might be important that we don't know a whole lot about the historical position of Chihuahuas, other than rumors that they were raised to be eaten. You might consider how each breed has become part of popular culture today. We see Great Danes in books and movies and cartoons like Scooby-Doo, Marmaduke, or even Batman comics. Yes, Ace the Bat Hound is a Great Dane. There are stereotypes attached to some breeds as well. Chihuahuas are often presented as Hispanic like Gidget, the dog in the Taco Bell commercials, or even as an accessory like Paris Hilton's dog, Tinkerbell, who acts more like a purse than a pet. Consider how this popularity might influence how society views and accepts these dogs. If a breed is in a popular book or movie, he might become more popular as a pet as well. This seems like a lot to consider, but it's how you get to know what really matters as you think about your topic. So let's try it again. Chihuahuas and Great Danes have different personalities, appear in movies, and now get adopted more. Well, okay, this approach is common among writers who are still a little unsure about how to write an essay. Notice that this example looks a lot like a catalog or an outline of your main points, but there's no real substance or flow to it. You can get even more specific than this and make it flow more naturally. So let's try one more. Despite their vast difference in appearance and character, both the Chihuahua and the Great Dane have found a significant place in American popular culture, which could eventually have a profound effect on the survival of each breed. Okay, you might notice that this is a pretty long sentence. Your thesis doesn't always have to be long to be effective, but really think about the depth of what you want to say. This thesis suggests more than just a short answer on a test or homework assignment. It definitely gives us a sense that this is a meatier essay, so let's take a closer look at it. What does this thesis statement really tell us about the paper we are about to read? Well, the first part of this sentence tells us that you're going to describe the basic difference in appearance and character of each breed. You might have already mentioned some of this as part of your introduction, but you might give us a little bit more in the body of your essay as well. This part of the sentence suggests that you're going to describe how each breed has influenced or become part of American popular culture. And this part of the sentence tells us you will describe how their popularity or place in American culture could affect the future of each breed. So this thesis sentence says quite a lot, but it doesn't sound like an outline like the last one did. But here's a caution. Just because we've pulled 3 general ideas of discussion here, it doesn't mean that they constitute the 3 body paragraphs of the typical 5-paragraph essay you learn to write in junior or senior high school. We're getting away from that 5-paragraph aspect. Each of these points could require multiple paragraphs to adequately develop them, and that's really what you want in your thesis statement, something that gives us a much deeper sense of the topic that you're going to address. Now, there are a few things your thesis sentence definitely does not need. Don't use the words "I think" or "in my opinion" in your thesis statement. In fact, you should avoid them in your essay altogether unless you need to distinguish your opinion from that of a person you just quoted. This paper will show that. You also don't need to announce what your paper will do in this way. Your thesis is staking a claim all on its own, so it should be obvious what your paper is going to do. And don't presume to know what everyone knows. If everyone knows it, then there's really no point for you to write about it. These sorts of statements will just sound clunky, and they're unnecessary. So what does your thesis need? Well, it definitely needs a clear sense of scope, direction, and purpose. We need to know how deep you plan to go, where you're going to take us, and in a sense, why that is important. And if you're writing about literature, be sure that you include the author's name and the title of the publication that you're talking about. All of this is part of the map that you're laying out for your readers. Now let's take a quick look at what makes a solid thesis statement and what makes a weak one. A solid thesis statement makes a substantive claim. A weak one makes no claim at all. A strong thesis gives us a sense of direction, whereas a weak one will just present an outline. A strong thesis statement explores something new. A weak one relies on a cliché or maybe a simple, well-known piece of information. A strong thesis statement digs deeper than the surface elements of the topic, whereas a weak one offers only a simple fact or an obvious statement. And definitely the strong thesis is going to answer the question that's been asked. A weak one may not address it at all. One way to judge whether your thesis is strong enough is to ask yourself a few questions, like this one: have I overgeneralized? And one way you can tell that is if you're using words like everyone, always, never, nobody. Those are such broad, general statements, so you want to avoid those kinds of words. Is it specific enough? Or maybe it's too broad or too narrow. Put it to the test. Ask another question. Can I ask too many big questions? If you read that thesis statement and your head immediately jumps to a bunch of broad questions, then maybe it's not specific enough. But on the other hand, does my statement leave room enough to address the elements of my claim in more detail? If it doesn't, you might have gone too narrow and stated more of a fact than giving us a good idea of what you plan to talk about. You might also ask if your logic is sound. Sometimes people write cause and effect or compare and contrast essays, and they're basing it on something that doesn't really make sense. You might also ask if you've used words like good, bad, great, those kinds of evaluative terms. These especially are weak ones, bad and good, and great often gets misused. Great actually means deep or big. It doesn't mean really awesome. We say it in conversation, but in writing, really use it the way it's meant to be used. So when you come to write your thesis sentence, just remember that it's really something like a treasure map. You're giving your readers a map to where your essay plans to go and the gold at the end of it. I hope that's been helpful. If you need any more help with your thesis statement, be sure you visit a writing specialist today.